Direct Connection is made by MPT to serve all of our diverse communities and is made possible by the generous support of our members. Thank you. Live from Maryland Public Television, this is Direct Connection with Jeff Salkin.
Good evening. Welcome to Direct Connection. We are taking a brief holiday tonight from the news of the world to talk about the upcoming Thanksgiving holiday. That looks roughly like I thought it would look. We're here to make sure that your holiday is not a turkey, metaphorically speaking. Joining us tonight for our Your Health segment, our gastroenterologist Andrew Rosenstein, chief of the Division of Gastroenterology, and registered dietitian Katie Davis, both of the University of Maryland St. Joseph Medical Center, neither wearing hats, and I know you don't want to be interviewed by a turkey tonight, so I think I will put this thing away. Thank you for being here. The point of the conversation is to make sure that people don't feel like they've stuffed themselves when Thanksgiving dinner is over and it's time to enjoy the evening. Katie, when we think about that meal, how many calories would you guess people consume on Thanksgiving?
A lot more than they should be, I think. I think I saw somewhere the average is at least 3,000 calories a day, or for that meal. When you think about it, the average recommendation is around 2,000 calories. So a little bit over half of what you should be having. And I think it's the amount of fat and everything else that comes with it too that can be a problem.
And doctor, there are a lot of ways that amount of fat and other things can lead to stomach discomfort.
Yeah, so Jeff, thanks for having us tonight. There's a lot of issues with overeating. Let's talk about reflux first. The stomach is a container. When you fill that container with food, sometimes, whatever's in the stomach will actually go up the esophagus, and that causes acid reflux. It's gastric contents leaving the stomach and going up the esophagus, and that can cause burning and discomfort, and sometimes, it can be very uncomfortable for patients. And overeating is another issue because people will feel distension and pain just simply from really filling their stomach and their intestines. So you can have pain and reflux after overindulging, and that can kind of put a damper on the holiday meal sometimes. And patients, this happens all the time. We get calls about it from patients almost every Thanksgiving.
Doctor, reflux has been in the news because President Biden just had his annual physical. And one of the things they noted is that he takes, I think, Pepcid, which, there must be tens of millions of people in the country who deal with reflux.
So reflux is extraordinarily common, and some people think that up to 50% of the population suffer from acid reflux at one point or another. And, there are a lot of things you can do to mitigate reflux. President Biden, I understand, takes Pepcid. A lot of people have heard of the proton pump inhibitors like Nexium. A lot of these drugs are now over the counter. And they're very effective at reducing acid reflux. But I think that the physical things you can do in individuals are also very helpful. So not eating too much at one time. One of the big things to avoid reflux is not eating or drinking within 3 hours of bedtime. So that includes water, which a lot of people like to eat or drink before bed. And that's a really bad thing to exacerbate reflux, because once you recline, whatever's in your stomach, it's easier for it to wash up the esophagus and create reflux issues. So these medications are super common. They're available. And the one thing I would tell people out there is that if you're using an over-the-counter medication for a prolonged period of time and you're not feeling better, or you're having symptoms along with those medications, you should seek a consult with your physician.
One of the things that it was apparently contributing to with the president was difficulty giving speeches, which is, a major component of the job of President of the United States. It was somehow affecting his voice.
So yeah, Jeff, acid reflux can sometimes affect can be laryngeal in nature, and it can irritate the vocal cords. And when that happens, so people, a lot of times it can create coughing, or it can create difficulty with hoarseness. And what happens is that if there's enough inflammation in the vocal cords, over time, you become hoarse when you speak. So that sounds like what's going on with President Biden, that he has laryngeal reflux. And ultimately, that can strain his voice and create difficulties and even coughing fits sometimes.
Let me remind our viewers, if you have a question about reflux or you have a favorite Thanksgiving recipe that you have to share, give us a call. We'll have the number up on the screen, or you can email us live questions at mpt.org. Katie, I wanted to ask you about the biggest calorie offenders on Thanksgiving Day. I think about, gravy. If dietitians have that, do you still have the food pyramid? If you do, I don't think gravy's anywhere on there, but turkey itself is something that dietitians sort of like, right?
Yeah, I mean, the new food pyramid is actually now called My Plate. And I think a lot of people can look at our Thanksgiving meals and use My Plate to incorporate that. Basically, the idea is you have a real plate of food. Half of your plate should be veggies and fruit and those kinds of options. So if you have like fresh steamed green beans, that's going to be better to fill your plate up with. But you still do want a quarter of your plate being a protein choice. So turkey, the problem with having too much turkey is the amount of fat. But over time, if you have a skinless turkey, then you can have that on your dish.
What are some strategies that people can follow to make Thanksgiving and all holidays less of a disaster when it comes to calories and also stomach issues?
I think there's 3 tips that I would probably share when it comes to trying not to overeat on Thanksgiving. The first one I would try is mindfulness. Mindful eating is something that we can all really practice every day, whether it's Thanksgiving or not. The idea is to actually enjoy the food that you're eating and not just mindlessly stuff your face because there's food on the table. So really try to think about the taste, the feel, the texture of what you're having. And one thing, it's okay if you take a couple bites of something and you don't like it, you can walk away from it. I promise I won't tell Aunt June about that.
There's some sort of expectation. There's no law about this, but everybody feels like you're supposed to stuff yourself.
Yeah, and that's kind of a tradition, but I think that we all know how it feels, kind of what Dr. Rosenstein mentioned. You have that bloating, the abdominal pain, discomfort, a lot of regret after doing something like that. So I think every year we can learn a little bit more from that and try to avoid doing it.
And Doctor, despite the tone of our discussion here, you like Thanksgiving and the meal.
Yeah, Thanksgiving is one of my favorite holidays. I mean, I think it's one of those holidays where it's just a family thing where you sit down and there's no real expectation other than you're going to have a nice meal with your family. So I watch a little football probably if you're into that as well. So I think it's great. I mean, obviously, we've all been there when we've eaten too much. And I think a couple of things I would tell people, take a break after you start eating and you feel like you're at that point. Maybe wait a few minutes because that full feeling will hit you and you'll be less inclined to go back and get a second plate of food. And if you have overdone it, you should probably keep some Tums and Pepsid handy by the bedside so that you might want to take those before bed and maybe sleep on a couple extra pillows so that you don't recline too much and have reflux during the evening. So a couple little after dinner tips that might be useful, as well as maybe taking a short little walk.
What does the walk do?
I think it increases blood supply to the GI tract. It gets things moving. You're able to kind of disengage from just laying on the couch and also being upright as well, because a lot of people like to take a nap after eating that kind of meal, and reclining is probably the worst thing you can do for your reflux after eating a large meal.
How does alcohol fit into this conversation? If people are having, maybe you've had a couple drinks watching football during the day, maybe it's a glass of wine or 2 with the meal. Katie, from a calorie standpoint, that counts. What does it do digestively?
Digestively, alcohol one thing it actually can really do is stimulate your appetite, which, if you're already worried about overeating and have a couple glasses of wine, that's probably going to stimulate your appetite to have a little bit more. But it can also fill you up in a way of and make the reflux a little bit worse than what it might be. So you do have to be careful, and the calories do add up quickly. Just even a light beer is 100 calories. So if you think about it, it adds up. If you have 3 or 4, you're already up to that 300 or 400 calories. So it can really start to add up over time on top of everything else that you're doing.
And in terms of the types of alcohol, does it make any difference whether it's wine, beer, or something else?
And one thing I would say is carbonated beverages can exacerbate the situation, right? So bloating, bloating and distension, two things we think about from eating too big of a meal at Thanksgiving: bloating and distension and reflux. So not only if you drink several beers on top of a large meal, you're going to have increased bloating and distension, but the carbonation can exacerbate that situation. So sometimes if you've had a few beers on top of a large meal, you might want to keep Gas X or something like that handy. It may help. It also will exacerbate your reflux. So alcohol is an irritant to the GI tract. And ultimately, whatever reflux symptoms you're going to experience from a large meal will likely be exacerbated by indulging in a few drinks. And I'm not suggesting that people shouldn't have a few drinks on the holiday, but just be prepared that they may exacerbate underlying reflux, particularly if you're going to have a carbonated alcoholic beverage on top of that. So something to think about. If you're going to do that, I would probably keep some Gas X or one of the anti-gas agents on hand, along with the Tums and the Pepsids of the world, so that if you are at that place where you're like looking for help, you at least have something available that evening.
Let's take a phone call from Allegheny County. This is Lisa. Lisa, thank you for the call. Go ahead.
Thanks for taking my call, and happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
I think you may have answered my question already. Is it better to exercise before the meal or after the meal, or both? Good
question. Thank you.
Well, I think what I would say is that I think both is the right answer, because obviously, you're going to have a caloric meal. It's great to exercise, and I traditionally will get up and try and exercise Thanksgiving morning, just to get my metabolism moving in the right direction. And obviously, if I'm going to have a few extra calories, I might be able to account for them better than if I did nothing leading up to the meal. And afterwards, I wouldn't recommend anything. I wouldn't recommend heavy exercise, but taking a little walk with the family pet or some friends after dinner or after the holiday meal will definitely help you feel more comfortable. So I think getting in some exercise early in the day to get your metabolism revved up and ready for a larger meal, and also accounting for some of those calories, is helpful. And then maybe a gentle walk after dinner can be helpful as well.
One other thing I wanted to bring up before we go is just food safety. We think about starting with a raw turkey in the kitchen.
Yeah, so food prep is critical in the holiday season. And I think we've all been there when we've gone to an event at a friend or family's house or at a party where people unfortunately have gotten sick. And one of the keys is making sure that your turkey is properly cooked, because if you do not hit the correct temperatures, people can get sick from poultry. So, a meat thermometer is really helpful. Reading directions if you don't often cook turkeys, and making sure you understand what you should be doing and what temperature your food should reach is important. The other thing is that cross-contamination is something we all have to think about in our kitchens. If you're going to clean poultry, which happens during the holidays, make sure that you're doing it in an area that's distinct from where you're preparing other parts of the holiday meal.
Doctor, that's a good place to leave it. Dr. Andrew Rosenstein and Katie Davis, both of University of Maryland, St. Joseph Medical Center, thank you very much. Now, Oprah Winfrey will be the guest of honor for a virtual Associated Black Charities event next week. We spoke this afternoon with the CEO there, Diane Bell McCoy. Ms. Bell McCoy, thank you for joining us again. Do I have this right that you are going to have the pleasure of interviewing Oprah Winfrey?
You absolutely do have that correct. I have the pleasure. It is actually an honor to be able to interview Oprah Winfrey. Just excited, thrilled.
And intimidated at all? I mean, she wrote the book on interviewing, right?
She did, but I probably will be a little nervous, but I'm not sure I feel intimidated. She, as I've heard from so many people that do know her, says that she's real, that she's down to earth, that she's simply what you see is what you get. And because I do interviewing as a part of what we do in the organization, certainly not at an Oprah level, but because that's a part of what we do, I think I'll be okay. I'm going to be a little nervous.
I'm not doing it at the Oprah level either. But she was a real person once upon a time. And I believe, are your offices still in Cross Keys? Because I think she used to live basically across the street there.
I just recently learned that from the landlord at Cross Keys, that she used to live in Cross Keys. I did not know that. But yes, our office is still at Cross Keys, although we're largely virtual still, but our offices are still there. Yes.
So this is the fourth and final installment of a speaker series titled Equity First. Tell us about the theme. What does that mean to you?
Well, we are very clear as an organization that we're focused on ensuring that racial equity becomes a driver for changing the economic outcome for Black workers in Baltimore. It's as simple as that. And as simple as that is, it's very hard in terms of changing systems that where racial inequity lies. And so we wanted a theme that matched our mission, that people were very clear as they heard about equity first, that we would be asking our speakers as we brought them forward on the speaker series some questions, but we also would ask them about their lives. All of our speakers have been Black, 3 female and 1 male. We wanted to hear about their journey as well and sharing that with our larger audience. And the other reason for Equity First, and particularly for a speaker series, I have to say, is my development director has done a speaker series successfully, and she suggested we do this, and we had one live, I guess, for about almost 7 years ago. We were doing them regularly, bringing in local speakers to share with a larger Baltimore community more about what their journey has been. We think that's a missing element, is being able to share that kind of information. So Equity First speaker series is born from that concept.
Before we go, we will talk about how people can get involved in this. When you say the word equity, it means different things to different people. I mean, in one sense, it means fairness. In a financial sense, it means ownership. How do you think about that word?
Well, we're referencing it where race doesn't matter. So we are talking about the fairness in terms of where if you have a situation where equity is in place and data is very important to measure whether that's in place, then the differences that happen for Black and brown people won't be there. When equity is in present, then you won't have those differences. Right now, we have very disproportional differences, whether it's around wages, whether it's around education, and even education when a white and Black person have the same education. There's a difference in wages, and most people don't recognize that. When we have equity in place inside of foundations, where they invest their dollars will not matter in terms of from a racialized perspective. When you have equity in place in terms of legislation, this should not disproportionately negatively impact Black or brown people. Without understanding that and being intentional, it does impact negatively Black and brown people.
Do you see anything happening now post George Floyd that would effectively address any of that?
Yes, a great deal has happened since post George Floyd. The question that is also should ask me is how much of that is lasting post George Floyd. We don't know yet. We know that a number of businesses across the country, across Baltimore, but across the country, pledged that they would bring about a difference and understood the need to pay attention to racial inequity. We saw a different level of investment in a number of Black-led nonprofits and foundations. That's good news. We saw an awareness that began to happen across the globe, actually, around this issue of racial inequity and the history of structural racism in this country and where that history comes from and why it's still embedded. So there's a greater awareness, there's a greater set of conversation. How much it will dictate action and sustainable action, because you don't remove something that's embedded in a system overnight. It takes time, it takes dollars, it takes a willingness to pay attention to your own data to begin to shift and change that. So there was a spark. Let's hope the spark turns into ongoing flames that can continue to move this agenda forward.
Are you seeing the income side of that reflected in your organization as you've done fundraising? Obviously, you know, we hit this big recession at the same time, but in terms of raising money, in terms of getting Oprah to help you raise money, have things been trending in the right direction?
We certainly have had an uptick in donations. The organizations have had a greater uptick in donations, but we certainly have benefited from donors that from across the country. Obviously, there are positive side of it, you can say positive around COVID, is that people look out in the world virtually and they begin to think about organizations that may not be in their own backyard. And so we did have donors come forward that are not right here in Baltimore. We have support from local Baltimore foundations. I think for us, it will be how do we go to the next level and begin to receive donations, grants, focused from national foundations who care very much about this agenda. Having an Oprah, and I share this with everyone, really was a gift. It was a gift, my belief. I won't own it to ABC, but it's a gift from God in terms of it was really a set of friends that I know that she knows in terms of reaching out and making the ask.
How do you put money to work if you're able to bring in more funds? What have you learned? You've been there a decade or so, I believe. What have you learned about what is an effective use of, what's the most effective use of your resources?
Well, I will tell you, for an organization that's an intermediary as we are, and we're focusing on systems change, and so that would also tell you some of it is actually into services. It is continue to dig deeper into those system changes, developing a greater, more robust data system, because to measure the change, you're going to need a long arch of change to measure. But for example, we provide services of providing for workers, Black workers going to work, mentors, volunteer career mentors. The data, and we use data, told us that Black workers, even if they are well-trained, don't necessarily stay attached to work, because they may not understand that work environment. They may not understand career upward mobility. Those elements that are not available in their access of their world, their resources. So this mentor actually works with them for 6 months to a year and helping them stay attached to work and getting a greater focus in terms of their career advancement, because that's only when we're going to see some wage uptick and wage growth to lead to wealth. We also invest in something called the board pipeline, where we actually train Black and brown persons to sit on nonprofit boards. The data told us 10 years ago, largely in this region, and there were largely organizations led by white females that largely had boards of white males, and they were serving largely Black people. And that we know having a voice at the table matters. So we've trained persons to sit on those nonprofit boards. But more than that, even on the transformative side, we're actually going deeper and training companies. We do a fee for service, but other part of that is we're working with workforce providers. That I don't think most people understand the connection between what you believe about people and what investment you're making them. And that is space around policies and practices that let you believe that Black and brown people are broken, and so they need to be fixed. We're shifting that. We have to shift those policies because they don't need to be fixed. You need to figure out what the systems are that are not supporting that, or your systems are actually intentionally letting them stay at the bottom. I'm gonna give you a concrete example if I can.
Sure.
And this is some work that I did years ago, but it's happening across the country now. But one of the sectors, we did a data analysis, University of Baltimore did it for us, on Black workers in Baltimore. Where were they? 63% of Black workers in Baltimore work in low-wage jobs in 4 sectors. Now, are you telling me that that means Black and brown people are stupid? They're not. Are you telling me that the opportunity doesn't exist? These are 4 sectors with high growth opportunities. But in one sector, for example, it's not a negative for the sector, but healthcare, there may be jobs that they could go up the ladder, but that job may have a degree requirement, not required by license, but required by the thought process of an organization. If you remove that degree and you develop very didactic training, this is proven in different parts of the country, right here in Baltimore, Biotech Institute. Biotech Institute has been going on for about 20 years, training people for high school diploma to become clean room laboratory technicians. These are jobs that used to require a college degree. Guess what? That makes a difference for their income, their ability to buy a house. It makes an income for the tax return that this city gets.
I know you feel there's too much siloing is the term, that you have one effort here, you have one effort there. I guess it means the groups that are trying to change things aren't maybe communicating enough?
Actually, I think the groups are beginning to form more coalitions. I think that's exciting. I think the next level of the coalition forming, though, is bringing both businesses in that conversation and data. So that there's the BNIA, in terms of Baltimore Neighborhood Indicators Alliance, has a data presentation on the community disinvestment and the population loss for Baltimore. It's phenomenal data to look and see those same neighborhoods that are largely Black have been impacted by transportation inequity. They've been impacted by digital inequity, every single one of them. And so again, does that tell you something? It tells you systems are at play. How do we now merge that data with the data from the workforce ecosystem and show the overlap. Then we can get to some of the core system problems that will give us transformative change, that we won't have to come through this cycle again and again and again, year after year. That's the change we're all looking for.
If people want more information on the event with Ms. Winfrey, which is next Tuesday, Giving Tuesday, and you're interviewing her, and I know she's going to be asking you half the questions. But anyway, where can people get more information?
They certainly can get more information by coming to our website in terms of www.abc-md.org. We invite you to come, learn more, come to the event, particularly on Giving Tuesday, where we want you to give even more in terms of continuing to focus on this kind of agenda, which is short and long term, to bring about change.
Diane Bell McCoy, thank you so much.
Thank you very much for having me today.
That is Direct Connection for this week. We're back Friday with State Circle and the latest on Maryland politics. Join us Friday evening at 7. We invite you to follow us on Twitter and Facebook at MPT News. And now for all of us here at MPT, thanks for watching and have a good night.
Your health segments are a co-production of Maryland Public Television and the University of Maryland Medical System.
This program was made by MPT to serve all of our diverse communities.